If you want to see how the sausage is made in American politics, look no further than redistricting. And if you want to see someone throwing a very large wrench into that sausage grinder, look no further than Maryland delegate Matt Morgan. Morgan is a Republican representing District 29A in St. Mary's County. But more importantly, he's the inaugural chairman of the Maryland Freedom Caucus. The caucus was formed to fight their overlords in Annapolis. Morgan also cited a void in conservative leadership in forming the caucus. In a state where Democrats hold a supermajority, Morgan has made a name for himself as the guy who refuses to go quietly. He has strongly opposed progressive policies like sanctuary cities, and he is currently pushing hard for voter ID laws at the ballot box. But where Morgan is really making the waves right now is the high-stakes war over maps. Maryland has been ground zero for some of the most aggressive gerrymandering in the country. As Morgan recently pointed out, Maryland once had a fairly balanced congressional delegations of 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Today, thanks to redrawn maps, it stands at 7-1. When Democrats debated redrawn congressional maps mid-decade to cement that power, Morgan didn't just complain. He strategized. In January, he rallied voters to testify against the proposed maps, telling them, quote, every piece of testimony can be used for a potential lawsuit. Morgan has called out the glaring hypocrisy in the national narrative. Democrats cry foul when red states like Texas redraw maps to gain seats, yet they cheer when blue states like Maryland do the exact same thing. As House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries parachutes into Annapolis to pressure state Democrats into cementing these maps, Delegate Morgan is standing in the breach, prepping for a legal battle. Here to discuss his ongoing efforts in the redistricting battle, GOP member of the Maryland House of Delegates and chair of the Maryland Freedom Caucus, Matt Morgan. Delegate, welcome on.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So what's going on in Maryland and what are you doing about it?
Well, Wes Moore overstepped his bounds once again in retaliation to the Voters' Rights Act, the Supreme Court decision. He has called a special session not to fix roads or lower taxes or address the energy crisis he helped create, but to gerrymander Maryland once more, to eliminate our only Republican. And in Maryland, they have a couple steps they have to go through. One is rewriting the state constitution. And that's what this special session is partly about, is to make sure that they can legally try to gerrymander here in the future. We saw our neighbors to the south in Virginia have some snafus by not following the correct process. And we think that Maryland's well on the path of making the same mistakes.
So, the recent Supreme Court decision made clear what, was always the constitutional case, that you cannot be explicitly racist in government policy. That seems to be the case in many of the Democrats' efforts to draw these districts. I don't think Democrats can do much of anything without putting race at the center of it. What's your sense of some of the existing districts and how many of them are, problematic by that explicit use of race?
Well, in Maryland, we have 2 districts that are minority majority districts that were set up and drawn that way. And look, Democrats are trying to expand this. The last bill that we had in the General Assembly this session dealt with the state's ability to sue local jurisdictions like the one I represent in St. Mary's County, over the Voting Rights Act. And look, the Calais case against Louisiana was about stopping racial gerrymandering. Democrats want to continue that as much as possible because they know it's beneficial for them. This is what they believe in. And right now, Wes Moore is looking to make a name for himself. And then he's really looking to take away the last majority white district that we have, which is the Eastern Shore, and gerrymander that and get an 8-0 maps for Democrats.
So, as a Maryland man myself, as we're called these days, when you cross that Chesapeake Bridge and get over to the Eastern Shore, it's like you're in a different state. And thankfully so, because, the supermajority in Wes Moore and previous administrations have really done a number to the state. Can you kind of talk about how hard left political entrenched power has really damaged such a beautiful state?
Oh, absolutely. In 2023, this term, Westmore inherited a $5 billion budget surplus and a state government that was frankly ran pretty efficiently. We've taken that over from Governor Larry Hogan, Republican. And what they've done with it is drive it straight into the ground. They blew the $5.5 billion surplus. They've hired 5,000 new government employees. But the interesting thing is, I can't tell you a state department that's actually being run better now with all these additional employees. They've added regulation on top of regulation. And the result has been, economic despair. There was just really recently a CNBC poll that came out that said that Maryland is the second worst state economy in the nation. And the citizens that pay for all this spending and mismanagement, they've had to raise $2 billion worth of taxes to where Maryland is one of the top states people are fleeing from. And as a representative in an area where people can trace their family history back 200, 300, 400 years, now they're being driven out both economically and culturally through massive building, through townhouses and things like that. It's really destroying the state. And it's sad to see the direction it's heading in because Maryland is a beautiful state. A lot of people call it home, and it should be one of the economic engines of the nation, not something that's the second worst in the nation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Every natural advantage. It's just a beautiful place with all the potential in the world. Now, you're set about to fixing it, which I'm thankful for. Talk to me about how you're building the case. You've been very strategic and legally minded, collecting testimony and so forth. Walk me through what you're cooking up.
So, look, I think there's a strong case to be made here that Democrats are just not following the proper protocols, the protocols in our Constitution and what they've passed in previous legislation, as well as they're not hearing what the people of Maryland want. Everyone makes being an elected official way more technical and hard than it needs to be. Basically, you tell your voters what you want to do, and then you try to accomplish this. There's no poll out there that shows that, hey, Maryland wants this redistricting. And if you're in a state like Maryland that's so financially dependent on the federal government, it makes zero sense to drive your entire state to the minority party when Republicans are in charge. And that's exactly what they're trying to accomplish. So look, we're hopeful that this gets stopped somehow. It's going to get driven to a voter referendum. We're hoping to get some clear language on that referendum. But look, when it comes down to it, rights are either moral and just or they're not. And right now, what they're trying to do with the state, rewriting the state constitution, is set up a situation where they have one set of standards, compact, contiguous, and respecting of natural boundaries for state maps, and they're trying to delete that from congressional maps. If it wasn't for a double standard, they wouldn't have a standard.
Well, Representative, that's all the time we have. But thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Coming up, this is not